Yeah. Jim Ed says, what's your take on the Gibson bankruptcy? Oh, simple enough. If you look at October 27th of 2017 on our live show, that was a question, what will happen with Gibson? I stated everything I thought was going to happen to Gibson. It's exactly what has happened. That, whatever happens, the owners might change, but the company itself will stick around. So let's tie in a couple questions to this. Okay, so since this is a big topic for the week, it says, hey, Phil, since Gibson filed Chapter 11, do you think any other company will buy them? It is very possible a company will try to acquire them while in bankruptcy. That happens a lot. A lot of companies that have been acquired during bankruptcy did not want to be acquired. They were trying to reorganize, and while the reorganization happens. And the reason that happens a lot of times is because you got to understand that for a company to file bankruptcy and then continue on, the judge, the bankruptcy judge, the court has to believe that they can operate this company, right? They're not going to let them just do it again. Like, hey, these knuckleheads ran into the ground. Now just try it again. Do over button, hit, go ahead. No, they got to show that they've figured out the mistakes, that they've figured out how they have to have a new plan, and then they have to make the courts believe that the leadership team can execute the correct idea and vision for the new company. Now, in this, what's happening with Gibson is obviously Henry is taking a step back. He's going to a consulting position. He's going to consult for a little bit. That makes sense. No matter what you think of Henry and how he's run the company, I'm sure whoever's running it now will want to know what was going on before, so he'll be there for that capacity. So they're going to try and keep the company and keep everything, so it'll be seamless. No one will even notice anything for the most part. Maybe some hiccups in deliveries to some of the dealers, but I doubt it. And in the meantime, absolutely, yes, somebody with money can come in and get them if they want. It can definitely happen. The other thing is that can definitely happen is they could be forced to sell off things they don't want to sell off. Now, there's a speculation about Epiphone being sold off. Here's the thing with that. There's a thing that's important to know about Epiphone. Epiphone is like the third largest guitar company in the world, okay? Now, you understand that if Gibson was compelled to sell off Epiphone, they'd be selling off a competitor. They're creating a competitor. So there's an easy argument for Gibson to say, hey, look, yeah, you want us to sell off this asset because it has value, but if we do that, we'll be fighting them for the rest of our lives. We'll be competing against products. Plus, there's licensing deals that we don't quite know about. I don't know how that licensing would work. Would Gibson then be pulling back the licensing to use a Les Paul name and stuff like that? My guess is that Gibson will, here's my guess. So I did the guess in October. I'm going to do the guess again. Here's my guess. I don't know who's going to take over Gibson, whether or not the original plan that they put forth to the courts happens or if somebody buys them. But regardless of what happens, here's what I think is going to happen to the actual guitars. I think Gibson will retain itself and it will spend money and time into making sure the brand looks better. One thing that you've seen happen with companies when they get bought out in these kind of stories or they reorganize, they put a lot of emphasis on profit and brand image. In other words, they're going to put a lot of money in the company to make the brand stronger, which means, in my opinion, making the guitars more expensive. We've seen this before, so you know. Fender received a large sum of money to kind of bail them out of some debt a few years ago, and we've seen the Fender Strats go up in price and add bone nuts and improve the quality and increase the price. Again, brand image, make that image stronger. So I think that's what the Gibson will do. More focusing on making the guitars look better and sound better and be more expensive, because that's part of that image too, right? You perceive it to be more expensive. It's usually perceived to be better. Whether you agree with that or not, I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's a perception. So I think that's what's going to happen with Gibson. And then Epiphone will probably stay with Gibson. If Epiphone is sold off, I'm sure there's going to have to be a lot of adjustments made to the Epiphone line so that it doesn't become a problem for Gibson. I personally would be concerned if I saw Gibson sell off Epiphone, because that would be a sign that they would maybe looking at doing the import line for the Gibson lineup. And the reason is because there's no reason to do an import line if you have Epiphone, but if you don't have Epiphone, you're going to have that company to compete against you. So So there you go. But as for that, I didn't do a video about it this week because everybody else did. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things going on. We just don't know. Just because they're filing bankruptcy doesn't mean anything yet. We don't know. Does it mean Gibson will be around? Or it most likely does, but we don't know. So there you go. In the meantime, hold on a second. I lost some questions for a second. I have a question for you guys, though, and we'll put it in the comments so that we'll be in the index. What does it mean to you that they're filing bankruptcy? I will tell you what I did this week. I bought 2 Gibsons this week. So just because Gibson was on my brain, everybody was talking about Gibson so much, I was like, I kind of want to get an SG. I've been trying to get an SG for weeks now, and I found a good deal on one, and I got one. And that's what it is. And it wasn't like I'm not telling you guys to invest in Gibson. That's not what I'm saying. I wanted the Gibsons to play, and it was on my mind so much this week that I bought them. Okay, hold on. And we're going to pull up where I've lost some questions because of my screens. Like I said, be patient with me. This episode's going to be a little tricky because of the change. Okay, Shane Gelvin wants to know, what do you think of lace sensor dually pickups? Shane, I will definitely tell you in a week or 2, I am putting a red lace sensor dually pickup in one of my strats. So that is happening. I currently have a red in the lace sensor in the bridge with a silver in the middle and a blue in the neck. And I'm going to put the lace dually, which is their humbucker red, in the bridge to see what I think of it. And I will make a video and make that available for you, for anybody actually. So, Netzer442 says, have a beer. Thanks, man. I could use one this week. Like I said, I was like, thank goodness I backstored a ton of video content on my hard drive before the computer crashed. Fincy15 says, upgrading a PRS SE Custom 24 pickups. Do you know if covered pickups will fit the 50 millimeter or 53 millimeter spacing? Yes, 2 questions, right? The first answer is yes. The PRS SE covered pickups will fit. No problem. They'll fit into the in the spaces of the SE Custom 24. And I would, if you're going to do it, get 53 millimeter spacing for the bridge and then get the 50 millimeter for the neck. That's what I would recommend. But like I said before, you can do 50 for both. But I would do 53 in the bridge, 50 in the neck if you have a choice. Shut Up, Let's Talk says, what does guitar mean to you? ? Just wooden strings or so much more? Spill your guts if you can, man. Cheers. What does guitar mean to me? Well, it means everything to me. Now I have children, so technically my children mean everything to me. I think that's, but guitar for me, it's different for everybody. Some people got into guitar because, they wanted to impress people, or they wanted to be a rock star, maybe famous. I started playing guitar because for me, it was just a great way to deal with being an adolescent kid. You know what I mean? It was just, that's what I needed something to do. And it was just, guitar was what spoke to me. And guitar my whole life has been my center. And what I mean by that is I've had many hats now in this lifetime of mine. I've served in the Army, and I've worked in corporate America, and I've owned a business. And every time, no matter what was happening in my life, guitar is where I came centered, where I can come back and kind of keep my sanity and be happy and enjoy myself. And it's a very important thing to me. Without it, I don't know what I would do. It has been there every time I've needed it. And for many reasons. And whether or not that's just playing the guitar, which is most time what it is, sometimes it's just talking about guitar, just something, just nice to have something. Mostly too, what else is nice about things like this is, what's nice about playing guitar, being a musician, is it's a fast way for me to meet other people that have the same likes as me, and it's a nice way to start a conversation than having to talk about things I don't want to talk about. A lot of people we have a lot of things in common as people on the planet Earth that are not very exciting to be, not very, I don't want to say fun. That's the word I'm looking for. They're not fun that we have in common, whether we have to worry about politics or planetary issues. Those are things we have in common, but maybe it's not the funnest story to have to start. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody. I can tell you this too. I've been friends now with so many different types of people over the years, whether it's like people that barely speak English, I'm good friends with because, we just have this passion together. People that, are different professions than me, you know what I mean? So it's nice bonding experience. So so what it means to me is it means everything. Without it, I don't know what I would have done so far in my life. It has not been a perfect life at this point, but guitar has definitely made it all worthwhile. Ian says, any experience with the MXR M81 bass preamp? Yep. And I have. So let's see what the question is. I'm going to be playing some bigger shows this summer, and I want to know if the bass DI is worth it, or is it versus a bigger amp and cab? Okay, so that MXR M81 bass preamp, I liked it. I kind of prefer the Sans amp more. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because that's like an industry standard, and everybody's gonna have a different opinion. But so I really do trust the Sans amp stuff, and I'm a big MXR fan, and that pedal too, but I ended up getting it and then going back to my Sans amp. So Sans amp for me is a recommendation. I even like the radial stuff. I like so much stuff, but to me it's like the Sans amp is just a good way to go too. But is it worth doing DI, or is it worth a bigger amp and cab? Man, that's up to you totally. I can tell you this: if I can get away with just using a preamp, that's my plan. But sometimes, because here's the deal: once you go to a preamp situation where you don't have a big amp and cab, you're at the mercy of wherever you go. So you got to be okay with that. If you're okay with that, you'll be fine. But if you are not, if you're a little bit of controlling, right? If you're a little bit of control freak, you might want to have your own bass amp and rig and have your sound wherever you go, because a preamp is going to be kind of your sound through whatever they have. So it depends on how much control you want to let relinquish. And Mark Allen says, hey, Phil, I'm basically an intermediate player, and I want to switch from combo amp to head and cab. What do you recommend to start out that's not so expensive? Well, Mark, one of the things that'd be nice is to know what kind of combo amp you already have. Head and cab to me, I mean, obviously they make combos and they make head and cabinet versions of amps, but not too expensive. That's a tough question every time, because I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know what, in retrospect, what expensive means. To me, everybody's gonna have a different opinion about this. To me, when I hear somebody said head and cab for not so expensive, I'm thinking like $800. That's like a reasonable price to pay for a head and cabinet. You know what I mean? But if you're looking for a Fender tone, I highly recommend the Super Champ X2 head and cabinet, and that's in the $500 range new, for a head and cabinet, 112 cabinet, but you can mismatch that cabinet. You can get a different cabinet if you like. That's a good option for an amp that I like. So there's something to think about that. Also, too, I got to know what kind of style of music you like. So if you want to let me know any of that too, I'll definitely add to the answer. Okay, and unfnk unbelievable. Well, I know what you mean. Says, what next from other manufacturers feel like or similar to Kiesel? Also, thoughts on the new Kiesel acoustic, worth for $1,400? Thank you, Phil. If you guys don't know what he's talking about, the new Kiesel has a new thin line acoustic. They made Jeff Kiesel announced it a couple weeks ago. I think it looks really cool. I have, as you know, the Godin A6, so the Kiesel idea kind of sticks out to me. It's a really interesting idea. I don't know anything about it. I'm really curious because I'm not 100% in love with my A6 at this point. I'm like 90% in love with it, so I could see where I could be tempted to go another way. $1,400. That's the thing, man. I agree. Is it worth $1,400? Well, it's worth what we're willing to pay for it, and and the A6 is $800 to $700, so it's half. That's tough, but it puts it less than a Taylor T5 at $2,500. Okay, so these are a lot of questions. Let's go with the easy part. Is it worth $1,400? If you want it, it's worth $1,400. It's not worth $1,400 until I hear it or play it, and we know that's going to be almost impossible. It's hard for me to take this new thing that I've never heard or seen, other than the picture, and go, yeah, I want that. But it's possible that I'll want it. But I've been staring at him. He's released a couple on Instagram lately that looked really cool. And as for feel to a similar to a Kiesel for necks, I'm going to say you're talking about neck shape. That's a tough one too. But when I was picking them up at the NAMM show, they felt really reminiscent to Schecter style necks to me. So that's, I feel pretty safe saying that. So Schecter has a gamut of like some thicker necks, some thinner necks, and then in between necks. I thought the Kiesels kind of had that same kind of vibe. So I think if you felt a lot of Schecter necks, you could feel pretty close to the Kiesel necks. I'm sure some Kiesel players out there are going to disagree. Keep in mind, I'm not a Kiesel player. I've been debating about getting my first Kiesel. I still haven't bought a Kiesel yet. I'd like to eventually do that and share that experience with everybody, you know, the whole process from start to finish and how it goes. Because I know I'm apprehensive to buy a Kiesel because of the fact of all these unknowns. So I promise you, if I do buy a Kiesel, I will document every single thing of it so that it might help anyone else thinking about doing it, because I would like to do that too. DRB just did a super chat for no reason. Thank you, DRB. I appreciate that. Sean Brown says, what is thin line? What is thin line? Thin line, like a thin line acoustic, right? Thin line. There's thin line Telecasters and there's thin line acoustics. Thin line Telecaster is a semi-hollow Telecaster. You guys, so if you Google thin line Telecaster, it's going to be a Telecaster that has semi-hollow chambered. They started in the 70s, I believe, mostly because they were heavy. The ash was really heavy, so they were just hollowing it out and putting a top on it. That's the main reason I think they did it. There's probably some other reasoning they explained, but man, the thin line the real thin lines from the 70s, when you pick them up, even half hollowed out, they're like 8 pounds. So a thin line telly is a semi-hollow telly. A thin line acoustic is an acoustic that's very thin. Of course, and it has a really mid-rangey kind of thinner sound to it because it doesn't have a big enough bowl to create a lot of bass. Tommy says, what's your thought on the Gibson collector choice? Are they worth the money over the price? Now, here's what I can say. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to assume it's expensive. Let's take a look. You'll find where my gap in what I talk and know about it is when guitars get kind of pricey. I don't buy guitars that are, yeah, I mean, here's one for $5,700. It's you gotta understand, like, I just bought a Gibson Les Paul this week, see, $5,900. Here's the thing. I will tell you this, and everybody's got a different story when it comes to what is expensive. When I buy stuff, sometimes people watching this channel say that my stuff is expensive. Everybody's comfort level on what they spend is different. I will tell you why my comfort level is set the way it is. Okay. So if you notice, I collect guitars and I buy guitars, and there's a certain threshold of price I don't go past. And here's what for me it is. I think it's because when I buy guitars, which I do purely for enjoyment, and I love that I'm able to work hard and be able to buy a guitar and enjoy it. And I don't feel any happier now than I did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I don't know if I'm playing guitar that long, but you get the idea, when I bought less expensive guitars. But what I will tell you is this. I know what a guitar is worth. So I know when I buy an American Strat, if I sell it used, what it's worth. And I don't plan to sell it, but I always think in my back of my head, you never know. Okay. So if you buy a $10,000 guitar and I sell it, I know what you're going to get for it. So sometimes I worry about more expensive guitars like that. They're harder to sell. They take a little longer. So it makes me more nervous knowing I have something that if I ever need to get rid of it, I can't. So, okay, let's see. All right. DRB says my comment got lost. Okay. Marshall DSL 40 combo on sale at Sweetwater. What do you think? Also, when will you get a Wikipedia page? I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get a Wikipedia page. I don't think I rate, that's for sure. But I appreciate you, kind of insinuating I might rate. Yeah, the DSL 40 combo, combo I've owned. I did a review against the Hot Rod Deluxe. The DSL series I was not a big fan of, the first series, but the DSL 40 combo it was a good amp. I've heard some people say that theirs kind of broke. I've heard a lot of people say that they're bulletproof, but overall, based on my experience and all the people I know with the DSL 40, I think it's a good deal. And I think they're on a deal right now at Sweetwater, right? So yeah, if you're thinking about it, I don't think you'll be displeased. If you're wanting the Marshall DSL sound, that JCM 2000 kind of sound, they have it in spades and they sound great. Flying Hawaiian says, if you never bought a Rivera Rock Crusher, would you still get it, or would you get something else for the money? No, I would still get the Rock Crusher. I was told that the Fryette one, I guess, is better. Obviously, the aux by what is that? Universal Audio, I was told, is better. But what I can tell you is, if you just watch one video, I don't care what video out there, find a video on YouTube and watch Rivera talk about how they build their stuff, and you're a believer of the quality. The Rock Crusher is a great thing. What it does what all attenuators do. It darkens the sound a little bit. It has all the problems attenuators have, but it's still one of the best ones out there for quality, and I trust it completely. And so, you know, I get a little nervous. People ask me if attenuators are safe for amps, and I believe they are. I've never had an issue, and I've, you know, with them, but I'm a little nervous of some of the weird off the brand things. I mean, you know, when I'm taking my $2,000, well, it's not $2,000, but if you take that Archon behind me, that's $1,500 street price. I bought a used one. I got it for $8, but you know, it's still a $1,500 amp. I take a $1,500 amp. I don't want to stick it in a $99 thing and watch it melt down. It's not worth it. So to me, the attenuator is an important part of it. And I bought my Rock Crusher used for $375 at Guitar Center used.com. You know, and I thought that was a very good price to pay for it. I think they're $5 new or something like that, but I find them all day, you know, for under $4 used. Definitely better used, you know, price to get it. So yeah, Marcelo just did a super chat for just to say, hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Email says, hey, Phil, is Hondo Strat from the 80s for $200 US dollars a good price? All right, we're gonna have a talk, Emil. Okay, ready? Inspired by sharpened videos, I want something cool to mod. Okay, here's where I don't know the answer, so I'm gonna give you my speculation. When I think Hondo and I think 80s, I do not think $200. I think Hondos as being disposable $80 to $100 guitars. But sometimes, because people collect what they had when they were younger, people get excited about those guitars. So I can see where the Hondos would come up in price. What I feel is, if you have a connection to Hondo, it means something to you as a kid, like that was a cool guitar, or it's a weird off-brand, or you like the way it looks, you go for it. But do I think you can find something as good as a Hondo for $200? Absolutely. We talked about Harley Bentons and me not being a huge fan of them overall. You know, they're good quality and stuff. I would probably recommend a Harley Benton over a Hondo. Hondo, to me, from the 80s, is going to be riddled with all kinds of weird stuff, like plywood body. You got to understand, some of the cheap guitars from the 80s and the 70s, they, instead of using the cheap labor and mass volume logic that they use now, that builds almost everything on the planet Earth, they were using cheaper materials too. So we think sometimes the older stuff is better, but not older, cheaper stuff. It tends to always be a little bit different. So I think for $200 is real money for me. You know what I mean? That's a legitimate amount of money to have. I think you can find some really great stuff, unless that Hondo is somehow special to you. But a Strat copy Hondo, I would say no. Plus, the other problem you're going to have is, you want to do the sharpening, you want to mod it up. I've talked about this before. When you grab those you understand, when you get this Hondo guitar, it's going to have a lot of stuff on it that is not correct for aftermarket stuff. In other words, the spacing is going to be weird. The size, the fitting, you're going to be constantly trying to fit it to things. So I would go with, when you're going to buy a cheap guitar or an inexpensive guitar and mod it up, try to find a guitar where you know you can get a good amount of good parts. Because again, part of the thing is, you want to learn something, you want to have fun, but you don't want to go down a money pit, man. And you don't need to shove $500 into a $200 Hondo. It's just the education will not pay off. Whatever you learn from doing that, which is valuable, won't be worth that much money. So some stuff to think about. Buzz Wilson just did a super chat for our Kiesel fund. I appreciate that. You know, like I said, I appreciate you doing that. Like I said, the Kiesel thing will happen. I think I talked about this when I did the Chapman Sharp Max fund, that I keep a fund, and these funds, I kind of slush them up, and that's what we did. And then so the Kiesel will be definitely a guitar that I will do next, because I know it's requested. It's like the Squier Contemporary Kiesel. I can name all the guitars. Right now it's Harley Benton, the Squier Contemporary series, Kiesels. What else? I mean, that are highly, you guys are saying, hey, could you get your hands on it and check them out? There was something else. The Chapmans were on that list, but now that we've satisfied the Chapman, the Chapman thing, I think that's over with. Trying to think of anything else that you guys have been pretty on lately. Donald did a super chat. Thank you, Donald. Okay, Blake says, hey, Phil, first time joining live. What are your thoughts on the Eastman SB59, SB59V versus Gibson Les Paul? Not looking to resell. Okay, so I've had great experience with Eastman. I love the quality. In fact, Eastman's one of those brands. I put Eastman in a special category. What I've done is what's the other? Recording King Acoustics is like that. It's a brand of guitars that every time I touch them, I think definitely more value than dollar. In other words, I feel like I'm always getting more than what I'm paying for with Eastman stuff. I've always been impressed. I think Eastman's also got a cool reputation too, as being that kind of like, it's not an expensive brand, but it's got, it's got credibility. So if you're trying to save some scratch and get something pretty decent, I think the Eastman's the way to go. But if you're, but in the long term, right? If you're trying to save some bucks and you're going to get the Eastman, I think you can be happy. But in the long term, a Gibson Les Paul is always the best answer, because in the end of the day, you're going to still want a Gibson Les Paul. That's the problem with all this Gibson talk. Everybody forgets all this stuff. One thing that always seems to be to people to forget when you buy these Gibson Les Paul type guitars, if you can be happy with it, you should buy it. But if you every day you think about Gibsons and you're like, how can I get a Gibson like guitar? Just get the Gibson, right? It's a guitar you can keep forever. You'll give it to your grandchildren. So there you go. And if that's not something in the near future you think you can do, then you can get the Eastman now and keep that for many years, and then eventually get the Gibson too. So there's always options. That's what I did. I had a knockoff Fender and knockoff Gibson forever before I finally got my first Fender, and I did exactly what everybody does. I bought a knockoff Fender, had that forever. Mine was JV Player. Then I got a Mexican-made Strat, and then I got an American Strat. And Gibson Les Pauls, I got a knockoff one with a bolt-on neck. Trying to remember what mine was. Greco, something with a G. Probably Greco. Anyways, add that, and then I got an Epiphone, and then I got a Gibson Les Paul, and it took me years to get that, but that's how I did it. A lot of my collection, I work it like a baseball collector would work it. I buy a guitar that I can afford, that I like, I'm happy with it, and I keep it for a while. And then when I see an opportunity to sell it and get into something else, I move up, and it's just how it's been done. And at some point I hit a level, for me, it's like the standard Strat by, Fender standard Strat and a Gibson standard. That's where I'm like, okay, I'm happy. I don't need a custom shop Gibson Les Paul, or something crazy like that. Okay. Marcelo says, my Strat style guitar has a 12-inch radius fretboard. Okay. And a set of Texas Specials. Should I adjust the pole heights so that they better represent the radius and have more even volume output each string? My guess is you wouldn't even be able to tell. That's my guess if you were to adjust those pole pieces. So no. The pole piece thing is a thing that some people really swear by. Me personally, I don't put a whole lot of faith in it. And the reason being is because I have flat pickups too that just sound fine. I have never adjusted. Now I've adjusted pole pieces, so and sometimes you got to try stuff. I've tried everything at some point. Everybody's got an afternoon with tools and a guitar and goes, okay, let's start messing with stuff. Yesterday I spent most of the day because I couldn't think about computers anymore. I was going to snap. I spent most of the day working on guitars. So that's what I was doing. Not work guitars like repair guitars, but working on stuff like this. Like, how does this sound and how does this work? And I took some footage. Hopefully it'll turn into a video. But no, I wouldn't put the effort into it. I don't think you'll see a result that'll warrant anything that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, so Emil says the follow-up question is: a used Squier standard better for mod then? Yes. Yeah, you know why? Because even though a lot of Squier guitars don't fit Fender standard parts, there is so many Squiers on the planet Earth that enough aftermarket companies make parts for Squiers too. So you see the term all the time, import Fender all the time. So yes, you can find a lot of parts from Squier. You can do everything you can do to a Fender Strat, you can do to a Squier Strat. Not with the same exact part, but with a like part, because there's so many Squiers. It just makes sense. If you're going to fix up an old Ford, or an old, you're going to find more aftermarket parts because it's a heavily sold vehicle. Okay. And hold on a second. Give me a second to catch up with you guys. Okay, Donald Davenport says, good locking keys for a PRS SE. I'll have to look it up again. There's an actual company that makes a PRS, or sorry, there's a locking key that it will fit in those holes of the PRS SEs. But so you know, the ratio keys with the adapters will work too. And I like them as well. I've used those a lot, as you guys see in the Sharpen My Axe videos. I was using them before. GraphTech was just sending them to the Sharp End in my Axe videos. But what's nice about that is I highly recommend them, and I've never been compensated by, you know, I'm not compensated that way with GraphTech. They help with the Sharpen Axe, which helps me take care of the videos for other people. But I have no skin in the game when it comes to telling you to buy those tuners. So I really highly recommend them. I really like Hipshot too, but the plates don't really work for the PRS SEs. I have Hipshots downstairs too as well. They'll be in a couple of Sharp My Axes coming up, videos coming up, but the plates are not as easy as the ratio keys. I would give the ratio keys a thought, but so you know, every single key you can find, you can find a locking version of that. They exist. Okay. Hold on, I just double checking. I just want to make sure we're not losing anything. Okay. The next one is, Mark says, $800 is about right. I like metal, hard rock, and grunge. Okay, so right now I have a Crate GFX20 and a Marshall G15 CD. Okay, so if you guys follow up, this is Mark's question about a good head and cabinet upgrade versus a combo, and he's got $800 in his budget. He likes metal, hard rock, and grunge. And so here's the good news, man. You got a Crate GFX20 and a Marshall G15. Everything is up from there, right? Everything you get is going to be like oh yeah. So for $800 and you want a head and cabinet, something that I think about, if you like metal and hard rock, the PV5150 micro head and cabinet from PV, the head would be about $5 and the cabinet's going to put you under $3. You could buy them used and definitely be in the $600-700 range for the both. Those would be a cool setup. I like those. And I like the Black Star 20-watt head and cabinet. That's pretty reasonable. Jet City, man. Look at Jet City. That's another stuff too. Another version of that price range amp you can get. There's a lot of great stuff. Those, in fact, in order, I'll give them an order. The Jet City probably sounds the best to me, but for some reason, I'm going to recommend the PV just because I think it's versatile. It's a nice little thing. And that amp is a really good amp from PV. PV head and a cabinet, that's great. If you want something a little bit like a little bit less fizzy distortion, more kind of growly, even though Jet City is kind of fizzy too. Jet City. In fact, I'm just going to say those two right now, just to not overcomplicate the issue. A lot of people probably recommend Orange. I recommend the Orange. I've had no bad experience with them, but I'm going to recommend my Jet City and PV first, just because I think they have a lot of cool stuff. Okay, now. Okay. Hey, we're doing pretty good. We haven't crashed yet. I was a little nervous today. Kevin says, hey, are you still interested in trying the PV Interactive amp? Yeah, we talked about that a couple shows ago here local, right? And he's willing to let me try it. That's the one that Misha Manshore uses. Yes, Kevin, I'm just trying to get my schedule set. Like, this stuff that happened this week really messes with it because the video content this week got a little problematic to make because of these issues. So I'm trying to catch up. I'm hoping to be actually on track. I mean, my videos are coming out on time, but on track in a week. I thought it was going to be this week, and then when the computer crashed, I was like, oh, that must be Murphy's Law. So I am really interested in checking out that amp and doing a review because there's no reviews of it. Hey, Phil. Robert says, hey, Phil, I was wondering, what do you think of the Epiphone Phantomatic? What? I don't know what that is. You know what's funny is when you guys make this really fun because you guys find stuff. You know I'm on the internet all the time looking at gear and then you guys find stuff. Oh, the Wilshire Phantomatic. Well, let's see what. Oh, I like this. So it's like a Wilshire. Why is it different? Hold on a second. Let's share with you guys. Here you go. So it's the Wilshire, which I've played and set up and which I like. It's got a cool vibe. And I'm sure whatever it is different is that switch right there, right? That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So given that, I like the Wilshire, so I'm cool with it. And just because curiosity, hey, there's a video. So why buy Epiphone guitars from Sweetwater? That's not the video we were looking for. We're looking for an actual explanation of that. Custom electronics. Okay, it's got a new electronic setup. The Phanto Matic starts off with 2 pickups. Alnico Classic Plus humbucker in the bridge position, Alnico humbucker in the neck. To further broaden the sonic capabilities, Epiphone includes a well-known Variatone notch filter with 6. This is cool. So what was the price on this again? Was it reasonable? $600? Oh man, I don't know, $600. It's 6 pounds, 10 ounces. I'm gonna give it a yeah. That's my official. Yeah, I like it. Let's go get. Did I stop that and go back? Hey, I'm back. So yeah, to answer your question, I dig it. I always like the Wilshire. It's got a cool vibe to it. I play a PRS Mira, and it's got that kind of vibe to it. The Wilshire's got a lot of things I like. And that cool switch sounds really fun. $600 sounds expensive, but you know, I don't know. What does stuff cost now? You know, let's be honest. What would I want to pay for that? $450, $500. So, I mean, when I say expensive, I'm saying it's $100 more than I'd want to pay. And I didn't even know about it until a few minutes ago. So so maybe that's a good price. Okay. Flying Hawaiian says, Phil, how do you like the Rock Crusher? Is it worth it to attenuate a Fender Princeton or Marshall Class 5? So, you don't, I don't really attenuate my Princeton. You can, to get it to break up. You know, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I have it for that. The Marshall Class 5 too, you can attenuate as well. You know, you can internally attenuate it. So, yeah. So to answer your question, is it worth it to have for attenuate those things? Yeah, if you want to attenuate your Princeton in Class 5, I like the Rock Crusher. I really, really like the Rock Crusher, not because of, I mean, it's got great sounds, but like I said, I think it's built well. It has great value. It holds a value too. So attenuators are a thing that you have for years and then you want to get rid of but yeah, I like everything about it. Alexander says, I just bought a used Tube Screamer TS9. And with all the boutique pedals out, this pedal is so good. Yes, the TS9. There's a reason why all of the stuff that has been around forever has been around forever. The TS9 is perfect. Think of all these pedals behind me. You know, where I disagree, I'll tell you where I disagree, and I'll tell you where I agree. I disagree with the statement that all pedals eventually start sounding the same. They all sound the same. Here's what I can tell you. This is where some people lose contact with I don't want to say reality, but of the perception. What I will tell you is this. If you try 200 pedals, you are going to hear a lot of pedals that start sounding alike. If you try 20 pedals, you're most likely going to hear 20 different pedals. In other words, yes, if you keep trying and buying pedals, at some point, you're going to go, yeah, I've had this one. I've had this one. I've had this one. I've tried this one. Yes, but even then, there are micro nuances. So at first, when you're trying pedals and you're getting into pedals, there's going to be massive differences. The difference between a TS9 and a Metal Zone is dramatic, right? The difference between the TS9 and the Maxon's version of the Tube Screamer, it's subtle. The difference between that and the next one, it's subtle. You know what I mean? So there's going to be grand, spectrums and micro spectrums. But no, there's one of the things I get concerned with sometimes when people buy boutique-y versions of pedals. I go, have you ever tried the original? Like, no, I figured if that's good, this is better. And I'm like, well, it's not better. It's different. To me, the Tube Screamer doesn't ever get improved. It just gets changed. Some people just, like I said, they don't want the mids. They don't want it so bright. They don't want the mids so pronounced. Some people want more mids. So, no, to me, the Tube Screamer works perfectly. It's a great pedal. So, yeah, good. Yes. And thanks for reminding us of that. It's really important to remember, you know what I mean, that the classics. Something that if you look behind me, look at all these kind of pedals behind me, but then I have all these Boss pedals because Boss pedals are good too. There's just good pedals are not a price point. That's for sure. You can find good pedals at every price point. So Some of my favorite pedals were $50, not even used, new. Brian says, hey, my jack's no longer jacked up. Got a switchcraft for the telly, installed it myself. Thanks for your vids. Thanks, Brian. That's good. So you guys know, Brian asked me, he had a Telecaster and his jack was all messed up, and he asked me for a good jack to recommend. And even though I like the Pure Tone, for the tellies, I kind of like the Switchcraft over the Pure Tones. So it's funny to me, the Pure Tone jacks that I recommend in the Sharpen My Axe, I like them for certain guitars and not others. And for some reason, the Telecaster, I really like this Switchcraft. So it worked out for him, as he's letting me know. I appreciate that, Brian. I think I owe you a response email. You sent me something and I was supposed to respond, but I didn't do it yet. Again, the week got a little crazy. Okay. Next on our quest for questions and talking, where are we at? There's 870 of us hanging out on this lovely Friday. Okay, Matthew Roche says, to record bass in studio, should I mic AKG C214, the cab, or direct into the mixer, Yamaha MG10XU, or use an additional 8-inch woofer wired as a microphone, amp not wired, direct out, cab equals 15-inch JBL, no direct box. Okay, so for me, with bass, I constantly find the best sound to be direct in. But sometimes, so here, Matthew, let me tell you a food for thought when it comes to bass and recording. If you have a band and you have a sound, and everybody knows this sound. In other words, you play out all the time and everybody knows your sound. And that sound eventually becomes your bass amp in your bass, right? People hear your bass tone, whether it's an Ampeg SVT or it's a Mark bass or whatever it is. You have this sound. When you go in the studio, it's going to be hard to recreate that sound with the direct in sound. So you're going to want to mic the bass amp to get the bass amp sound, your sound, right? That being said, that's a different scenario than I just need a good bass tone. So to me, when I'm recording bass, I'll plug DI in. I'll use a preamp and DI in and direct into the mix and dial in a great bass tone for the song and just critique it to the song. And then now it's the opposite problem. Now, if you're jamming later, you're going to have to figure out how to get your amp to sound like that recording. But if you have the ability, I highly recommend that you do both. You record a mic up the bass cabinet and do a direct in. And that way you have the choice to mix the two. You can either mix them together, or you can use them for certain parts of the songs and others, or just isolate one or the other. Also, you'll get it out of your head which one do you kind of prefer. But sadly enough, it's really depressing. You find out throughout history, a lot of bass players did DI, even back when DI wasn't a big deal. So bass a lot of time is DI'd in. It's probably the most DI'd thing in, more so than anything else. So there you go. Okay, and let's find out. What did we miss? Anything else that we missed that was big? We covered the big stuff, right? Billy Robertson says, how long can you leave your Hughes and Kittner in standby mode without worrying about the tubes? Billy, so I'm laughing because Hughes and Kittner sent me the Grandmeister 40 and they to review, and because they sent it to me and they mentioned that it would be nice if it was in the background a lot of videos. You'll see a lot of videos where it's been on. I just left it on standby for hours. That thing gets hot. The top gets hot, which a lot of 2 amps get hot, but it gets hot, and I've had no issues. In fact, one day it didn't turn on and I thought we blew it up, and we hit the mute button on the back. So far so good. What I will tell you is that Grandmeister 40 review is coming up, and I have put it through hell and back because I'm just curious. That's one of the things that's nice. If a company is willing to send me a piece of gear and check it out, I'm going to do to it what I would never do to my personal gear. And that's why a lot of videos I've done stuff, took things apart, cut them in half, you know what I mean? Because, break strings, do stuff. I'm like, hey, you know what? If we can do that, it would be nice to see it, because it's not always easy to do. You know what I mean? You can't just do that to your own personal gear. There's money invested in there. So no issues yet with the Hughes and Kittner. It's been a bulletproof amp. In fact, that amp to me, the Hughes and Kittner Grandmeister 40 has been what I call a slow burn. I got it. I liked it okay. Then I liked it a little bit more. Then I liked it a little more. Now I'm like, oh, it's like, you know what I mean? Though, but I am so glad. I am so glad that I don't get stuff and just open the box and review it, because I have seriously found the tones in that amp that I really love. And I think if I would have done the review when I first got the Grandmeister Hughes and Kittner, I would have said, these are some good sounds. Here you go. You know, and, you know, but now I've found a couple tones that I like, and they're not tones that I don't think I would have found if I didn't just have it and kept going at it and trying to figure it out. And especially even if I bought it and I'd had a return policy time, I'd probably want to, you know, I probably would have given up. So I've really found some sweet spots. Some things that I even thought, like I was going to say originally in the review that it's great, but not great for strats. And now it's my favorite amp to put my strat through for rock tone. So like I said, I'm excited about that, but no issues. And we'll talk about it more when I do the review. I'll make sure to hit up on that, since I know that's something you're concerned about. Billy, do me a favor, put in the comments how long you want me to run it. I'll put it on standby for as long as you say. You want 24 hours, 48, 72? How long you want me to put it in standby? I'll just put it in standby and see how hot this thing gets, right? Because I know why you're freaked out about it, because the thing gets warm. Like you could cook an egg on the top. It's metal and it's packed in there. Everything's in there. Like you have the same concern I had. It's like, how do they get everything so close to each other without damaging each other with all that radiant heat and all that problems? So Billy, you give me a time frame, or if somebody else suggests a time frame. So Billy said 48 hours. Billy, I will run it for 48 hours. Okay. I can't time lapse that. There's just no way. I don't have battery power and cameras, but I'll find a way to document that to effectively for you. I will put it in the video that we ran it for 48 hours. And you know what I can probably do though? I could probably take a heat shot. You know, I think I have something that, you know, like one of those lasers that tells me heat, and you know, and see how hot it gets versus 48 hours later. Do something like that. And I think that's something that people are interested in, because like I said, I wouldn't have thought about it if I didn't have it, but you guys will see if you have one or if you mess with one. They are really impressive, but it kind of does creep you out that they're so packed and tight. And so far so good. So 48 hours, Billy, that is what I will do. And that way you don't have to worry about yours. Or if mine burns up, then you'll know. That's why, like I said, I will document it to some point. So if something does happen, we'll know what hour in it does happen. I'll put it on a stopwatch or something, and then do some, maybe every few hours, record a few minutes to say this is where it is on the stopwatch. So H. Flynn says, hey, Phil, you're generous with your time and videos. Just curious how you can afford to buy so much gear. Nothing sinister about the comment. Just that's a lot of gear. Yeah, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that comment. So it's easy. I have been collecting gear since I've been 15. Okay. And this will put it in perspective, maybe. So my wife and I have been friends since we were 14. Okay. So we weren't high school sweethearts or anything. We didn't date until we were in our 20s, but we were friends. We knew each other. And so my wife loves to tell this to people, because when people will look at gear and they go, you know, wow, he's got a lot of stuff. So here's the deal. I've been collecting gear or buying gear since I was 15, since I started playing guitar. And I've had one rule. I don't sell a piece of gear unless I buy a piece of gear. And that's an easy thing now, you know, like, hey, I sell this pedal and I buy this pedal. But it was a little difficult when, you know, rent was getting tight, and you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know, the gas gauge was really low on the car, and you know, tempted to sell a piece of gear to pay for that stuff. And I've done whatever I can over the years to not have to do that. Now I'm sure at some point in my life I have sold a piece of gear here or there to pay a bill, but I have always paid it back to myself. In other words, if I did sell something, let's say a cabinet or a pedal or something, and I paid a bill with it, I made sure to reimburse myself that money like a loan, like almost like a pawned it to myself in that idea. So over the time, this is what collecting gear for 20 plus years. Let's do the math on that. I don't probably want to know the math on that. 25, 26, 27, 28 years. I've been collecting gear for 28 years. Now, I don't do anything else. I have no other hobbies. I don't fish. I don't ride motorcycles. So I don't have any, you know, I'm not into anything else that sucks up my disposable income, just gear. Now, keep that in mind too, after you collect for a while, and this is where it really gets important, is certain things that were unobtainable to me, I can trade into them. You know what I mean? My first real expensive guitar, I didn't buy it. I traded for it. I traded 3 things and got it. You can accumulate this stuff. You can buy deals when you have. Now, the other thing that's important to know is I've been in this industry making my living from the music industry for 17 years. Is that right? Let's do the math on that. Probably wrong. It's probably 15 years. So for 15 years so I literally make my living in this industry, in the music industry. So some way or some other. So of course I've, that's how you do it. Plus, like I said, I owned a store for 13 years. This is nothing compared to what the inventory of the store had. So that happens too. So that's how you do it. But no, I wish I had a cool story like, oh man, I make a couple $100,000 a year and it's just living the dream. Nope. I mean, I'm passionate about this stuff, so much so that this matters to me more than, like, let's say a type of car or, expensive watches, none of that stuff. It's just, this is what I'll spend my money on. If you know me well, my really good close friends that ever watch this, if you ever want to chime in, you can rat me out. They'll tell you, I'll buy a car because it has cheap tires. You know what I mean? The tires are cheap to replace, because I think about, well, if I spend all the money on tires and maintenance on the cars, because I'm a maintenance person, I like to have everything maintained a certain way. I'm like, that's money I can spend on gear I like. So that's how I do it. There you go. All right. Hold on. Before we go, I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Joseph R says, hey, Phil, I have a really long question. Could you get an email? I could email you too. Yes, the answer is yes, Joseph. Joseph, you can send it to P McKnight. It's just P and then McKnight 7 at Gmail. That's a public email address. I have a lot of public ones. That's a public one. Just put in the comments, Joseph. I'll know who you are and what the question is. Questions. The problem with questions is that, like you said, the long ones are the tough ones, because it's not reading them; it's the responding to them. But since you kind of hit me here, I'll put my best foot forward to respond to your question. So sometimes you guys give me a long question, it's hard, and I don't know the answer, so I got to think about it. And then by the time I figured out the answer, I can't find you in the email history anymore. I'm getting better at stuff organized. It's just a lot of volume. This channel had a lot of volume very quickly. So, and that sounds like, maybe that sounds like a brag or something. It's not. It's a crisis. All of a sudden nobody's watching you, and then all of a sudden a lot of people are watching you, and it's just a lot to, you have to figure it out. And that's why I said, like, videos, everything, I've been figuring out as we go. My goal is to make this as efficient as I can, to do as much as I can. Antune Jack says, what all do you do in the music industry? Oh, it's easy. Well, obviously, I own my own bass company. I made bass guitars, and that's where I got the money to open my store. So then I opened a store. I had the store for 13 years. Now, a lot of you guys know that have been following the channel for a while know that I closed the store because at that time, I'm a full-time repair person. I had a store I was running that had a lesson academy too. And I wasn't running the lesson academy, but, okay. So I ran the store and I ran the repairs. I also have a consulting company that I do consulting, and it's been very lucrative for me for many years. And I've been doing that. And then really all YouTube is all the stuff I've been doing. I started making YouTube videos. I've told the story. I just started making them. But this is kind of like what I was doing when I was talking to companies about stuff. And I'd go, hey, wasn't this cool? Isn't this a weird way to look at this? Isn't this fun? And people started watching the videos. So that's how it worked. The YouTube thing, as it grew, it really became this thing where not my repair side, but my store side, what I was drawing for salary for the store, this is almost equal to that in that logic. So I was like, well, I'll just do the YouTube. So that's where that is. So at this point, and sadly enough, my personal opinion, I think cool cred, I think building the bases was fun. I think owning the store was really fun. But doing YouTube is great. I love doing YouTube. But for some reason, I can tell you now, when dealing with companies, being a YouTuber has more influence with them than owning a store ever had, or anything like that. Companies that, when I used to give them hundreds of thousands of dollars as a store, give me more attention now as a YouTuber than they did as a store owner. I've talked to many store owners. I do that too all the time now when I do consulting. And I've told them some of the things I've learned now dealing with companies and how companies treat me better as a YouTuber than they did as a store owner, which is funny to me, but funny, interesting, strange. It's strange. So yeah, that's how I do it. YouTube is what feels like a part-time gig is a full-time gig. So I consider myself part-time YouTube, but part-time YouTube now is definitely 40 hours a week, easily. A Sharpen My Axe video, if you think of it this way, Sharpen My Axe video that you watch is 24 minutes. It takes me about 4 hours and 5 hours of footage to make it. I have to edit that down. So you got to understand, not only do I have to do 4 or 5 hours of work, right, which is almost a full work day if you're doing an 8-hour work day. So let's say if I do 5 hours of work, right, so I'm almost a full work day. Then I have to watch 5 hours to edit it. So that's 10 hours of work. And then, in the editing, because you're watching all that footage to chop and edit it. So we'll say 10 hours. And then, with the time it takes to contact companies and get the parts, the time to talk to the person whose guitar it is and ship them the guitar back, get that all orchestrated. So on average, I would say Sharpen My Axe takes about, I'm going to say 20 hours. So that's 2.5 days, work days. So it's a 2.5. So a Sharpen My Axe video is a 2.5 work day week. So there you go. But videos don't really work that way, sadly enough. One video can take me 2 hours and one video can take me 3 days. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Dirt Racer X says video editing sucks. Yeah. I love the fact that I love opportunities to learn. And so over my life, as you learn different things, it's great. Learning video editing has been very exciting for me. I don't worry about it now. It takes lots of hours, but at least I'm really interested in this concept because, editing has been, something that I've been learning. And when you're learning something, everything feels fresh and new. So I'm really curious to see what you guys all think of this Monday's Sharpen My X video. It's Sharpen My X instead of Sharpen My Axe. I'm really excited about this one. Okay, let's do 2 more and then we'll call it. And let's see what we got. And then real quick, I just want to make sure we didn't lose any super chats. Sometimes they get a little buried. Okay. All right. I think we're good. So let's see what you guys got. Trey says, what software product do you use for video editing? So video editing, I'm using 2. Believe it or not, I use Final Cut Pro and I use iMovie from iMac. And so I jump around from both those. And the reason is because I jump around with how I make videos. Again, sometimes my son gave me some great advice. He's really into YouTubers. He's a teenager. He's really into YouTubers. And he told me when my channel started growing, he said that a lot of the YouTubers he watches, in the video game industry, once their channel starts getting bigger, they actually start making less and less content. And he said, and he's right, because as you become, the channel becomes more exposed to people. In other words, as I know I make a video, making a video and not knowing if anyone's going to watch it is a much different experience than making a video and knowing that 2,000 people are going to watch it in the next couple hours. And the reason is because when you're going to fall on your face and one person sees it, it sucks. But when 1,000 people are going to watch it fall on your face, you're more in tune with it than you probably should be. So what I've learned is that you get caught up in making sure the videos look perfect. But it's it's silly because it really, more than I think most people, more than a perfect video, people just want you to make the content consistently. So I have decided over time if sometimes that's the sacrifice. A funny story is the Chapman review, that Chapman video. If you guys remember, the lapel mic was boomy. Well, it's because I wanted to make that video. I wanted to make sure it was done. I was not in a situation where I could queue up my equipment and do the stuff. So I did that on the iPad. So that video was made entirely with an iPad and then iMovie. So sometimes, you use what you got, right? There you go. Okay, one more question. This is the last one. Okay. Oh, Robert Walker, do you change the guitars behind you for videos? No, I don't. The guitars change behind me because I have 2 rooms, and in the house I have the original room that you used to watch the videos. You can always tell if I ever in that video. I don't do videos in there anymore, but if I am, the walls are white, so you'll see the guitars behind me. The walls are white, and there's no pedals on the shelves, and these walls are gray. So I have slots here where these guitars hang, and then a slots in the other room. And that's why, like, the Hughes and Kittner's not in here, but the Mesa's in here because I swapped. In fact, there's my Archon combo down there, right underneath the Mesa. So some amps I keep in the other room, some guitars in the other room, and they swap. I play more in the other room. I just do. It's where I spend my time. So that's why they rotate. And then sometimes they get put in gig bags because I'm not playing them. So there you go. But that's why. So I rotate them that way. And the reason is, it's funny, is if I was smart, I would actually fixate this stuff so it looks the same. So when I cut it, because sometimes I have videotaped a part of a video, and then a couple days later I videotape the other part. And if you guys are paying attention, you'll see stuff's moving around behind me in the same video. Because of that reason, because it was a couple days later. So, okay, last one, because he did a super chat. It's David. It says, best case humidifier for a Gibson J45. Been trying the Addario humidipacks, but can't get the RH above 30%. Fellow Arizona here. 30%, man, it's tough. I'm sure they want you, 50, 60%. In Arizona, if you're doing 30 to 40%, you're doing pretty good. Those are pretty good. I prefer, for me, especially for the money, and I like the Addario humidipacks, but for the money, try Oasis. I'll put a link in the description. Really good stuff, refillable. I like that as well. Those are great. But sometimes what you're going to have to realize is the only way you're going to get humidity up in the Arizona in your guitar case, is that what you said? Bass case, is one in the sound hole and one by the headstock. So you're going to have to run 2. And so something to think about there. It's just because, man, you live in the desert. You pick the desert to live in, and nothing wants to live here with you, including dead wood. So there you go. All right, guys, great live show. I appreciate you guys hanging out so much. Over 800 of you, as always. I thank you guys for dealing with all the stuff of the week with me. Like I said, a little crazy computer issues there, but somebody says I missed a super chat by Queefer Sutherland. I will double check right now because, like I said, they're archived. Double checking, because things happen before we say goodbye. Oh, there it is. Okay. Your opinion on Dane Electro 12 strings. I love the Dane Electro 12 string, the 59. That's one guitar. I don't own a 12 string. What I can tell you is if I did own a 12 string, it would probably be that one. There's one at the Guitar Center I like that is really cool. So yeah, I love it. I like my Dane Electro 59, my red one. That's my favorite Dane Electro. So, in fact, they sent me a baritone. I have it, but but I like the 12 string, I think, more. But I'm excited about the baritone because I think the 12 string I just would have been, hey, it's cool. because I wanted one, and the baritone made me think I have to come up with something interesting to do with it. So yeah, that's a good one. But oh, and another thing too, I just want to thank everybody, all the new patrons on the Patreon hangouts for this month. I will make the announcement when those hangouts will be. Again, this week really threw me off with the computer crashing. They're going to probably have my computer for another week or so, but I'll have stuff in place in the next couple of days to take care of. So there we go. And anything else? That's it. I think we're good. I appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you for supporting the channel, and look forward to Monday's Sharpen My X video. Let me know what you guys think, and then we'll talk next Friday. All right, guys. As always, thank you for your time. Know your gear.